You smell like you've done a fart, cat.
Hello and welcome back to Hardy's Books. Don't worry, Hatless Ross can't hurt you. Laura, what are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about a little duology, a pair of books that we've both read in the last couple of months. I've actually read one of them before, but reread in the last couple of months, that we've both hugely enjoyed and think that you might enjoy as well.
Yes, this is our book evangelism series. We've already done one.
No, it's not.
No? Well, we're bringing you the good news that is these two books. I'm only using the religious theming because they are literally called A Psalm for the Wild-Built and A Prayer for the Crown Shy.
Okay, fine.
Okay. I'm not just putting it in there for flavour. There's genuinely a reason. So yes, today we're going to talk about Becky Chambers.
Yes.
And we want to talk about specifically the Monk and Robot series, which are two recently released little novellas, which are, let me just say, fantastic.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
And don't just take our word for it. If you go back and watch our Joanne Harris, The Books That Made Me video, and of course you all have.
Of course.
Because it is our best video and we do keep going on about it. But if you haven't, this is your chance to go back and watch it and hear what Joanne has to say about these books. And may I say, now that I have read both of them, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Just to prove how good these books are, A Psalm for the Wild-Built won the Hugo for Best Novella in 2022. A Prayer for the Crown Shy won the Locus Award for Best Novella in 2023. So they are critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
If you go and listen to the podcast Past, Present, Future with David Runciman, there was a recent episode done about these two books that really inspired me to convince Laura to make this video, which didn't take much convincing, to be honest. But basically, I'm slightly obsessed with the optimism that is in these books and the vision for a better future. Shall we talk about them?
Let's talk about them. So Ross, who is Becky Chambers?
All right, Becky Chambers is the author of the Wayfarers series. So books such as A Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet would be probably her most famous one. She also recently wrote a novella which was released called To Be Taught If Fortunate. She is a Hugo Award winner, a Locus Award winner, who has a style that's very much based in this cosy aesthetic, you know, books that make you feel a bit of hope.
Yeah.
And
in fact, some people call it hopepunk.
Exactly that. Monk and Robot is set on like an Earth-ish analog, right? So it's kind of, I think it's a moon. It's a moon orbiting a planet. Panga, yeah.
Which is obviously, you know, based on Pangea.
Yes.
Being, you know, the giant continent that our continents came from.
The supercontinent, the ultra-continent.
Yeah, the supercontinent that our continents were, where their genesis was.
We don't get explicitly told if this future is a future of our Earth or whether there's a divergence here or what's going on exactly, which is interesting. It kind of lets Becky Chambers have a bit of a blank canvas to work with. The catalyzing incident in this world, which is set in an imagined future, is that this world used to have robots, and it was very consumerist and very consumer driven and very innovation focused. So one day the robots
woke up
and then went off into the wild, left humans to get on with it. And what do you do in a society where you don't have your main form of productivity, your main form of technology anymore? It forces you to drastically remake society. So that is the jumping off point for A Psalm for the Wild-Built. That history happened, I think it says a few hundred years ago. It was called the transition.
The end of the factory age.
And so robots have been basically unseen since then. They're in this rewilded part of the world that the world is kind of separated into two parts, essentially. There's the inhabited world inhabited by humans, and then there's this outside world. And the first book follows our main character, Dex.
When we meet Dex, they are a monk tending the gardens of their monastic community in the city. But they are feeling increasingly discontent with their role. And one day they go to their superior and they say that they would like to change their vocation and become a tea monk. A tea monk being a person who goes out into the community and works almost like a community liaison, almost.
Almost like a counsellor, but without actually providing any counselling services.
They don't have any counselling qualifications. They just go around and make tea. They brew a pot of tea, And the people of the communities come to their wagon and they make some tea and they sit and they talk. And it sounds dreamy.
It does, to be honest. I really do sometimes feel like we need a tea monk.
Yeah, I'd love to go to a tea monk.
Yeah, really do with a tea monk.
Maybe we just need therapy.
Yeah. So Dex is very good at this, although not initially. But Dex becomes very good at this.
Yeah.
And in the course of their administrations to various people, they become slightly discontent. Like there's a sense of ennui which fills them, that they're not quite getting what they want out of it.
This is a minor spoiler for the early parts of the books, but it's very early and very minor.
This is basically the inciting incident, which is that Dex decides that they want to hear the sound of crickets, which are basically just don't exist apart from in very remote locations and on recordings.
They've heard recordings of them on the internet, but they've never heard them in real life.
So they decide to head out into the wilds to a place, in a hermitage, where apparently these crickets can be found. And once they leave civilization, pretty much straight away, they meet a robot called Moscap. And
this is the first communication between humanity and robots since the transition. So this is monumental. Not that either Dex or Moscap particularly care for that.
We have our setup. We have these two characters. We have Dex, who is searching for some greater purpose. We have Moscap, who is actually also searching because the robots have all come together and they've decided that it is time now to reach back out to the humans after having been away for so long and to find out what humans need.
Yeah. But it couldn't have found a worse human for it, because Dex has no idea what they need. It's found basically a human in the midst of an existential crisis.
Yes. So this is book one. There are two books.
Yeah.
So book one, A Psalm for the Wild Bull, is all about Dex and Moscap on their journey to the Hermitage. And then book two, just to set that up, it's when they get back. I won't tell you too much about book two. Maybe we'll touch on some things about it later.
Yeah.
One of the things I think works really well with these two characters, and this book is very much a book about Dex and Moscap and the way they interplay with each other and the way they kind of fit each other's issues. Mostly how Moscap fits Dex's hole, which is that Moscap basically has the answer for Dex. Dex is someone who is always looking for the next thing to bring them, wholeness, to make them feel complete, and they can never find it where they are. Whereas Moscap has this incredible ability to just be completely present in the moment, to find their sense of purpose in just watching insects or
watching stalactites grow.
Well, yeah, exactly. I just think that's really special. I think they work really well against each other.
Yeah.
Moscap has this very embedded view of nature. They've lived their entire life in nature, and it's kind of an interesting contrast, the fact that they are essentially a robot made of metal parts and some plastic parts, but yet their relationship to nature is more pure and more whole than Dex is, despite Dex having been a gardener.
Yeah, and a tea monk, an itinerant, travelling, nomadic tea monk whose whole shtick is moving from place to place and being never in the same place twice.
And it feels like, in some ways, that Moscap is giving Dex therapy, like we were just talking about. Like, there is a sense there that as you read through, that not only is Dex receiving therapy, that kind of you are receiving therapy a little bit.
Very much.
There's just such
I see a lot of myself in Dex.
Do you?
Yeah.
I can see that. Like, Dex is...
Hang on, what?
There are a number of people that I could see in Dex as well that we know personally. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I think that that was something that Shannon Valor brought up in that podcast that I was just talking about. So I can't claim it. I didn't notice it myself. Honestly, I really do recommend this podcast. It's an excellent listen, and I'm probably not doing it enough justice. But
it is really good.
It's a really, really good discussion. In Moscap, there is almost, just by virtue of them having a robot brain, there is then a discussion of neurodivergence as well. It's another way of essentially seeing the world through Moscap's eyes. It kind of encourages us as well to also consider those around us who are autistic and have a different way to neurotypical people of seeing the world. And it kind of opens up your eyes a bit, kind of gets you to think about different lenses to to see those around us.
There are different flavours of neurospicy as well.
Neurospicy, I like that.
I think something that these two books do very well is explore the idea of a utopia, but it doesn't do it in the way that we're used to.
Yes, there are so many kind of science fiction books that where the utopia is almost seen as like secretly a dystopia.
Yeah, and the one that springs to my mind, I forget the name of the book, but it's an Ursula Le Guin one.
Oh, Those Who Walk Away from Omelas or Omelas, depending on how... Omelas.
Yeah, the whole thing with Omelas is that it's this utopia, but at the very centre of it, there is this horrible flaw.
Yeah.
That's keeping it all going. And as people discover this, they walk away and they leave this utopia behind. So it turns the utopia actually into a bit of a dystopia.
Totally. And I think one of the things that we are perhaps have a bit of a lack of in science fiction utopias is utopia as an example of something that we can actually aim for and potentially achieve. I've heard critiques of these books saying that the world that they inhabit, this kind of non-technology dependent world where, you know, people are receiving free therapy and where everything runs on, you know, solar panels and buildings are made of cheese proteins. I've heard people say that that's unrealistic, and they've used that as a critique of the books.
It's science fiction.
I can get that. I can understand why they would feel that, but I think that there is a real space for books to offer us a vision of the future that we might ourselves struggle to imagine. So the world which is presented in these books, to me, feels like a cure for the ills of our current society. And it makes me want to read more books like that. It makes me want to lean in to this optimistic science fiction. It couldn't possibly happen. Like, we couldn't possibly get there. In this book, they managed to.
We might have to.
Yes, in fact, David Runciman was bringing up the point that it might need to be that the robots in our world, so I guess it might be AIs or whatever, or technology in some form, will need to withdraw from us in order for us to actually create a better society. It's so interesting to imagine what that could look like. So I'm a bit obsessed right now. I kind of almost want every book that I read and every book that I write to have that kind of optimistic purpose, of that optimistic imagining of maybe not even just of the future, but also an optimism about our current conflicts. I was reading Premi Mohammed's The Siege of Burning Grass recently, which is a book about pacifism in the wake of a conflict between two nations that seems like it'll never end. There's a really interesting discussion there that imagines a different way of doing things. In our society today, I think there is like a poverty of imagination. Like when people think about the future, for instance, capital F future, they think about flying cars or holograms or whatever. It's so superficial.
Yeah.
And as humans, we need to evolve our instincts, which I think these books present a really good example of humans evolving their instincts beyond this need for innovation.
Yeah.
There is this kind of discussion of life being at odds with itself.
Yeah.
And again, Shannon Valler brought up the story in the book of the overpopulation of the elk. That these elk that have access to lots of food resources that, you know, causes the elk to spiral in terms of overpopulation, and life is good for the elk in that scenario. What we get into in the second book is this idea of crown shyness. As in, when you look at a forest and there are the trees, is that there is no tree in this forest that is sticking up above the rest and reducing the trees around it, reducing their access to light. You know, each tree has its own space and isn't trying to put itself before anything else. And that is the kind of society which these books imagine, and the kind of society that I'm excited to help bring about. So I'm kind of just obsessed with books that are doing that work.
Quite revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quietly revolutionary.
Yes, absolutely. And that actually kind of leads us in as well to the other factor of these books, which is the coziness of it. Cozy fantasy is a very big thing right now. What these books prove is that even though there is a tea monk, that it goes beyond hot drinks.
Even though it does feel like a big, cozy hot drink.
Yes. Cozy fantasy and cozy sci-fi has so much more to say than just someone retiring from adventuring and opening a cafe. Not to say that like Travis Baldree, etc., aren't writing good books and that there isn't a place for those books. I really do think there is. What these books managed to do is create that cozy environment while still having something really important to say. This is the hope punk element of it.
Yeah.
I kind of think that maybe the way they do that is partially in terms of the structure, that the conflict present in each chapter is usually kind of resolved by the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
You think about like finding water, for instance. There's a chapter where they have to find water, and by the end of the chapter they have water.
Yeah.
Is not world-ending stakes. The stakes are low. That's kind of because the world has already ended in a way, and they've managed to survive it and move on and become better. So it's it wouldn't be as interesting to see that world under threat.
That's true.
Yeah. One thing that was quite personal for me as well in these books, and something they reminded me of, was actually something that I was doing during lockdown, and then I brought Laura in on. And funnily enough, Becky Chambers actually wrote these books in lockdown as well. So it's funny how lockdown has...
Did you write both of them during lockdown?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
She had a much more productive lockdown than I did. I just played Animal Crossing.
Yeah, and watched copious numbers of episodes of Poirot.
Yeah.
And what was it, Tiger King?
Yeah. Oh, those were the days.
We remember them fondly. Meanwhile, in lockdown, what I was doing was I was actually taking part in a shared TTRPG space online that we'd basically made this Discord server and developed like a bit of a shared world where people were running Dungeons and Dragons games in this world and making basically a shared story. But in between those games, we were just hanging out on this Discord server and role-playing as our characters, which was a bit of a trip. It was so strange. You were meeting these people and kind of having in your head both the actual living person and their character. And what it enabled us to do was to explore different ways of building community in an imagined safe space. For a lot of people as well, it actually helped them to uncover their own gender identity as well by playing characters that weren't of their assigned gender and getting to explore kind of using non-binary gender identities, of which Dex is non-binary in this book, so they use they/them pronouns. And likewise as well, Moscap uses its pronouns because they say they are an object. When it says it's an object and Dex says, oh, I don't want to call you an object, Moscap comes back and says, no, that's really important. Why do you assume that an object means that I am somehow less valuable to the world or that it wanted to be called it? Which I thought was absolutely fascinating. Anyway, so we were doing this as a group. We were taking part, and then one of my friends who joined, my friend Mike, joined as a Warforged character, which in D&D is essentially like a robot. And we then got to explore that element as well. Mike was playing one character, and then this character died and had to replace it with another character, again of this Warforged race. And the Warforged basically developed into a whole kind of node on this map that was something that we came back to time and time again, and how these machines were relating to these human characters, or elves or dwarves or whatever, but how they were relating. And it was just so interesting. We kind of got to do that.
He's a nerd.
So when these books arrived in my life, it was like I'd read it before.
He's a nerd.
I just found it really fascinating. Anyway, maybe you don't care about my experience with it, but I just wanted to talk about it because it was such a wonderful time, such a wonderful thing to experience, and I made so many friends in that time.
Yeah. To be fair, I've now joined that same Discord server, and I love everybody on there, and I now have a character in that world.
Yeah.
I'm also a nerd.
So maybe that's my encouragement to you, is that if you want to discover new ways of imagining the world to be, then do some writing, do some playing TTRPGs, inhabit a character, discover how they think. I would highly commend these books to you as a jumping off point for thinking about things like that. And I'm definitely going to go and read some more Becky Chambers now, I think, as well. I think that, I couldn't not read more of her now. I think she's absolutely designed for me. Yeah.
Well, have you read any Becky Chambers? Have you read The Monk and the Robot? Have you enjoyed them? Did you enjoy them as much as Ross? Is Ross a massive nerd?
Yes.
Let us know in the comment. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you'd like more content like this, then please, if you're not already subscribed, then hit that subscribe button down below. We have our online shop, that is hardysbooks.co.uk, where we are selling some beautiful signed / special / first editions. I think that covers everything.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
I think it does.
If you've got this far, please comment.
Ross is a massive nerd.
I'm owning it. All right, thank you everyone. See you in the next video.
Mwah.